Probably one of the biggest barriers to entry. I mean, it is the biggest barrier to entry to Warhammer is the cost, because this is a game where the pricing is totally controlled by one company and they can set the price at whatever they want. And that makes sense because they are a publicly traded company. They have a duty to, make profits for their shareholders, but that cost comes at the expense of the consumer. So with all that said, I still decided to join Warhammer as a hobby last August. So it's been a full year since I joined Warhammer. And in that time, I've spent a significant amount of money, and we're going to get to that in a moment here. But what I've done is I've broken down all of my purchases, and I've kind of divided them up into eras, like the starting out era, like, building my first army, etc. And we're going to go through each of those eras, talk about how much I spent in each one, what I spent it on. Did I regret that? Am I happy with it? And then at the very end, we'll reveal how much I've spent totally over my entire year in the hobby. By the way, if things look a little bit different in this video, I am in the process of getting ready to move, I guess at the end of the month, but I'm already starting to move things around, and this display case is probably on its way out and some other stuff like that. So if things look different going forward, they probably are different. Okay, so the first era is going to be the intro era to my Warhammer career. And the very first thing I bought, which I do not regret, is the Space Marine Starter Kit. Because I wanted to test if I liked building models, if I liked painting models, and I knew I would like the game. I mean, yeah, you still have to play it, but I was pretty sure of that. It was the building and the painting that I wasn't sure of. Now, you can see I've got Gunpla in the case back there, right? So I kind of knew I liked building too. Painting was the one real thing that I wasn't sure of, and guess what? I really, really enjoyed it. And then once I bought it, I already had a start on my paints. I had a brush. So it's a really good purchase. I think anybody that wants to get into the hobby, this is like a no-brainer, aside from actually going down to a Games Workshop store, getting the free mini where you build it and paint it in store. That would also be an appropriate first step if you didn't want to spend $50 on a Space Marine starter kit. That's Canadian, by the way. So once I decided I wanted to get into the hobby, I thought to myself, and I've talked about this before, so I'll try to keep it short, but I was going to play the Lumineth Realm Lords. So I bought their Vanguard box. The Vanguard boxes are now called Spearhead boxes. And I also bought their Battletome. And neither of those are regrettable. I like the models so much. I love the Battletomes. I love the lore, the art, all that kind of stuff, even though shortly, not even a year after I joined the hobby, a new edition came out. My Battletomes that I have are now invalid. The art in there is still really cool. I'm okay with that. The lore in there is still very cool as well, so no problem there. I then moved on to all of the starter basics that you need for the hobby. The Tamiya plastic glue, the gray primer spray for my army, some paints, some brushes. So then I went and bought some dollar store paints and some Mod Podge so I could work on basing stuff. And again, I've covered that all in previous videos. I bought aquarium gravel for $8, and I kind of regret that because there's so much. I'm never going to use it all in a million years. So, if you're near me, I'm going to send you some gravel. And then I bought some, some grass. I bought some more paint, and that kind of rounded it all out. Now, the grass that I bought is kind of long and harder to apply, and I kind of wish I got a shorter grass or those pre-made little tufts that you glue on to the base. But overall, felt really good about these purchases. This era total was $450 to get started. And with that, I was able to build and paint an entire Vanguard box and do the basing for it, etc. I don't think that's too bad. Finally, I want to mention, I strongly recommend that if you are starting out in the hobby, you do not go too hard buying paints at the beginning. You don't know which paints you're going to like or want or use a lot of. So just go get the basic colors, get your metals, get some of your basics. You can mix them together to make paints go a long way, basically, is kind of what I'm saying. And you'll know what you want when you actually increase your skills. You'll have a better idea of what kind of things you like or want. All right, so for the next era, it was the Addition of Cities to Sigmar era, where I bought the Cities to Sigmar army set for $215. I bought some black primer for $15 at my local Walmart. And this is where I discovered that the Rust-Oleum primers that you can buy are not only much cheaper than the GW ones, but they're way better. The spray feels better. The application was easier. It looks better afterwards. Never buying a GW primer again. Otherwise, I got some matte varnish as well for finishing my miniatures. and which I actually haven't used yet because I feel like none of my miniatures are done. So that one, kind of regret the matte varnish, didn't need to buy it yet. Thought, oh, I'll use this. That was 14 bucks. I bought more paints because when you buy a new army, new scheme, you have to get new paints, another $55 there. And then we had a wet palette, and the wet palette is huge. Highly recommend people get that because it's just such a huge thing for painting, and you do not need to go buy the expensive ones that you see on YouTube or on Amazon, whatever it is. I bought the Sta Wet whatever Masterson's wet palette at my local art store for $19. I bought some parchment paper from Walmart so I can, you know, have unlimited paper for that you might actually even have it at home already. And then I bought some paint and decal solutions so that you can apply all the city's decals to the guys. And the total for all of that was $349.66. So adding a second faction was a really big deal. It was a big decision, but seeing as how I wanted to always play Cities of Sigmar, but they just weren't refreshed yet when I joined the hobby, I'm glad that I went through with the purchase. Playing two factions at the same time has added to my expenses overall, and you'll see that later on as well when we get to a later era that I'm calling here. So I really strongly would not recommend going into two factions so quickly to a new player. I just wouldn't say that is a good idea, whatever. And guess what? You're going to be so tempted repeatedly to do that all the time. I mean, I was tempted to go into a third faction for a little bit when I was thinking about going into Tzeentch, and I'm really glad that I resisted, and I'm going to try to resist that urge for a long time to come and really work on mastering the armies that I have before I move on to another. It's also going to, you know, hurt your chances of getting to 2,000 points, as you know, if you're really into wanting to play the game or something. So otherwise, yeah, I got the new paints, the wet palette, all that kind of stuff. You can even make a wet palette with Tupperware. There's tons of tutorials on how to do that online. So, you know, no stress. Don't go buy the expensive like red grass one. Okay, so this next era of my Warhammer hobby, whatever, I don't know, that's just what I'm calling them, is the expansion of the hobby. That's what I'm calling it, expansion of the hobby. And this one's a lot more reasonable. I bought a storage bin and organizer for $18. I bought a magnet sheet for $12. And then I had a magnetized, you know, case that I could put my models in because I bought some magnets for like, I don't know, it was like $4 on Amazon, and then super glued those onto the bottom of the bases. And then I have a little, you know, case. I bought a GW painting handle for $15.68. And that was totally worth it because I was using a wooden dowel that had like some blue tack on it. And before that I had a paper towel. No, I had a toilet paper roll that I had, no, you know what it was? It was a cereal box that I had cut in half and rolled up into a roll and then taped it together and just put some blue tack on that. And honestly, for starting out, again, it's teaching you like what you can do and not spend money on. And if you're really happy with what you have, then you don't move on. But I thought, okay, you know, instead of putting blue tack on all these things and sometimes the guy falls or whatever, I'm just going to get the painting handle, fits the bases. I was ready for that, but I had been doing a lot of painting, so I felt good about that. But what I would stress again is not to rush into things, not to go out and buy every single accessory. Try to do it without them or your own makeshift solutions, then spend the money when you're committed and you know what you're doing, okay? Otherwise, I bought some Masters brush cleaner, which was recommended online. That stuff is amazing. It's a cheap purchase, will last you forever, and it has made a noticeable difference in the quality that my brushes have been like keeping up to. Like, 'cause I had my initial brushes, they're all toast by now. I didn't do a good job with them. These new brushes with the cleaner making a big difference in the form of the brush and how clean I'm keeping the brush. Part of that's my technique too, but definitely go pick that up. I think that one's a worthy purchase, again, at your local art store. And the total for that expansion of the hobby era is $61.97. So very conservative compared to the last two. Okay, so this is the second to last kind of era. This is the march to 2,000 points. So 2,000 points, if you don't know, is the max point limit for how, you know, an army that you're going to build in Age of Sigmar. And I want it to be 2,000 points in two armies, in Cities of Sigmar and in the Lumineth Realm Lords. Now, I'm not yet at 2,000 points for the Lumineth. I'm at 1,750, but with the cities I am, and it's because of these purchases. So first, I bought the Fusilier Major on Ogre Warhulk for $72 Canadian. And then I bought some one-page rule models for $109.69. However, those did not come with bases, so I had to buy $25 worth of bases to base those up. I also bought the Lumineth Battle Force for $275 and then some other paint that I needed. The total for this era was $487.89, which is a lot of money. And this is where buying 2 armies all of a sudden shoots you through the roof. If I had stuck to 1 army, you know, you can easily take $500 or more off of the final number that I'm going to show you in a little bit here. But this is where I really sped up what I was doing. And now I have a backlog of painting. Like, I have so many models that need painting, I won't need to buy another model for a very long time. But on the other side, you know, when I've actually played a game now, I've played a 2K, well, I've played games before, but I've played my first 2K point game, and it was exactly what I was hoping for. So I enjoyed myself immensely, and now I'm just looking forward to getting my Lumineth up to that point so I can try them out in a 2K point game as well. But playing a game is kind of tricky when, you know, when I play Magic the Gathering, I can just sub cards in and out and you know, try things. That's really hard when instead of buying like a, you know, 50-cent card, well, it depends on the card, you're buying a $60 to $100 model. So I don't know, once I get to 2,000 points with Lumineth, I'm going to be proxying models wherever possible. Just like with my friends or something where I'm trying out some abilities and you know, what a model does before I actually, you know, commit to going and buying something that's going to help me have an informed decision before I buy. But speaking of those proxies, I did buy those 1-page rules, 3D printed models. My friend sent me a link to a website with some really good deals. So we went ahead with it, and it took months for the models to arrive. So freaking long. It was crazy. I actually thought they wouldn't come at a certain point. The website is called onlygames.co, and I strongly urge you to never use this website. So the models ended up arriving. They looked like I was hoping they would look, and I was happy with that. My friend's models did arrive as well, but he had a broken model. But both of it took forever, and that was with us like constantly. You had to submit, I think I submitted like 3 tickets, and when you submit a ticket, there's no record. They don't send you any receipt, so you really, it's like you send it off into the ether. You know, so there's some things you have to consider when you go this route. Either way, if you go through, you know, my mini factory and then you print them yourselves or whatever it is, just keep in mind that, you know, you're not getting any bases. You have to go buy those. You know, the pricing was in USD for me. So in Canadian dollars, it was more than I thought it was going to be. And a lot of these models, you know, when they actually shipped, the shipping cost, the cost of like the model with the exchange, and then buying the bases, when you put all of those together, it actually wasn't that different from the Games Workshop equivalent. And if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick Games Workshop because the sculpts are better. You get the joy of building it, and I love building my models. You get to customize your models, and it's for the game. You never have to worry about going and playing at a GW store and having proxies or something. So there were exceptions, like for example, the Free Guild Marshal on Griffin. It was an exceptionally better deal to go with the 1-page rule miniature, way better for me. And the model is insanely good. Like, it's way better than the GW one. And so I'm really happy with that. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to go to Only Games again. Like, I will look for any other site. And if you have any recommendations, I know Etsy is said to be pretty good. I might do 3D printing in the future. I kind of want to get some dwarves for my city's army and do that through 3D printing, because there's some pretty cool ones that I could get into. But again, like I said, I don't want to do anything quickly. I want to wait and think about it before I make those big purchases. Okay, so this is the final era, the current one, the 4th edition launch, and I only bought 2 things. I split the Fire and Jade Spearhead pack with my friend for $35 each. I bought the 4th edition core rulebook for $96, and the total was $131 Canadian. And so I'm really happy with the core book. I enjoy having it. I love the lore. It's not as cool as the Battletomes in terms of lore, but it has a little bit about the realms. It has a little bit about every faction. It has a little bit about the story so far in every single, well, era of the story as well. So it's a really good piece of literature, especially for someone that's in content creation, where I can make content without or inform myself for my content. So I'm very happy with it. I also love having a physical copy of the rules, but the rules PDF they release online is the exact same thing. So you could print that. You could get it printed nicely if you really wanted to, whatever it is. You don't need the core book unless you really want the Path to Glory rules. And in that case, then that's a reason to get it for rules. But if you're just wanting the rules to the game, use the PDF and you can get the lore and stuff other places. I talked about in a previous video that the Spearhead pack is pretty good value. Terrain, a game board, all the cards. looks really good. It should come with the Fire and Jade book, but it doesn't, and that was kind of a bummer for me, but overall seems like pretty good value for 70 bucks. So before we get to the final price, I just want to say there are some things that made my journey into Warhammer a little less expensive, and that would be gifts, because since I got into the hobby, I've had a birthday and I've had, we've passed Christmas, and I've had some generous gifts because my family members were like, oh, you're into Warhammer, I'll buy you some Warhammer. So I actually got 2 boxes of Fusiliers, an Ironweld Great Cannon, and some Venari Dawn Riders. Those were all gifts over birthdays and Christmas. So thank you, fam, for that. You've saved me $200 something. Okay, so the final cost for an entire year in Warhammer Age of Sigmar is $1,480.65, which when you just look at it all together, like, that is a lot of money. But on the other hand, I'm really curious what the expenditure is going to be in my second year, because I'm only going to need to supplement my stuff, right? Like, I don't need to buy whole entire armies or big box sets. I'm just going to buy like a model here, a model there to try stuff out in my army. Maybe some dwarves. There won't be the startup cost for paints and for, my tools and all those types of things. I'm not ashamed in this number. I don't have any regrets. I feel very comfortable with it. I don't know if my wife feels comfortable with it, but I do want to be more selective in the future with what I buy. I want to be careful and make sure that I don't rush into anything, which is, those are famous last words. But at the end of the day, I'm a pretty conservative person generally. Like, I try to work at things over a long period of time, and I try not to rush into purchases. So even the purchases that I made during this year, none of them were like, snap, I'm going to go buy that purchase or buy that thing right away. They were, hey, I want to buy the Lumineth Battle Force box. And then I thought about it for 2 weeks. And I talked it over, with my wife. This is why I want it. This is why maybe it's a bad idea. This is why it's a good idea, and then I went for it. So I'm kind of curious at this point, though, because I've been talking for a while, what your thoughts are on this. So, what do you think about my purchases? Did I make any that you don't agree with? Did you think that I was going to spend more than that, less than that? What do you think the second year holds for me? And then otherwise, I'm kind of curious what your most expensive or maybe most, high profile Warhammer purchase was. And if you feel comfortable sharing that, you can in the comments down below, and we'll talk about it. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.